Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. So, some context. My parents, late 60s, have fostered several kids over the years. The kid they're fostering now is the 5th one, and he's also the 2nd one they've officially adopted. I have been living abroad for the past 3 years, so I haven't seen this kid in person until recently. My fiancé and I, 29 male, 27 female, had been planning to move back to my hometown and had even been looking at a place just down the road from my parents. We thought it would be nice to be close, especially as they're getting older. However, when I visited recently, I learned that the latest kid they adopted is special needs. And during my visit, my parents were heavily hinting that they could use some extra hands to help manage everything. They were talking about how hard it is to manage his needs due to their age and everything else in their lives, and how it will be great to have family nearby who can pitch in. It honestly felt like they were already assuming I would be there to help out a lot. I wasn't expecting this when we made our plans, and I kind of panicked. After discussing it with my fiancé, we decided to look for a place a bit further away so that we wouldn't be in a position where we would feel obligated to help out all the time. It's not that we don't want to help at all, but I don't want to become an unpaid caregiver, especially since this wasn't part of my original plan or expectation. My fiancé fully agrees, but my parents are freaking out. They say I'm being selfish and only thinking of myself. So am I an a-hole for changing my plans to not live so close after finding out about the situation? Edit. He's 7, previously adopted kid who moved out a long time ago, and we haven't heard anything from him in nearly 8 years. I don't understand why my parents are even allowed to foster, much less adopt. They're both quite weak physically. Update. My parents tried to set up an intervention of sorts with me and my fiancé, basically to convince us to move closer and help out. They made it seem like we were abandoning them and the family by changing our plans. But I turned it around on them and told them that what they really needed was professional help, and that they couldn't just expect me to step in as a caregiver, because guess what? I have my own life. I told them that they need to hire someone who is trained to handle special needs kids. They didn't take it well and said they wouldn't be able to afford one without having to do major budget cuts in other areas which they feel they're entitled to at their age. But I feel like this is a hole they dug for themselves, so they need to figure out a way out themselves. You're not the a-hole, OP. You are right. You didn't sign up to be a caregiver to this child, and you shouldn't be forced to. Your parents shouldn't have just assumed that you and your fiancé would take over taking care of the child without asking or telling you about it beforehand. But I pity the child, and you also admit that your parents are weak and they need help with him. I would advise you pitching in for the caregiver bills since your parents can't afford to. I'm sorry you're in this position and you didn't sign up for it, but it would be good to do this for your parents and their son. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for not helping my sister pay for my father to go to a nicer retirement home? I want to start off by saying I haven't ever had a good relationship with my father. I primarily lived with my mom and stepfather, so my stepfather was more like a dad to me. My stepsister, on the other hand, had a much closer relationship with my father. My father had married her mother when she was little, and my stepsister primarily lived with them. Anyway, my father is no longer capable of fully taking care of himself and living on his own, so he needs to go live in a retirement home. The ones that he can move into with just his social security money and disability money are less than ideal. So, my stepsister has been sending me options to other homes that are nicer, saying that we can split paying the difference for the home, so Dad can live in a nicer place. This is the part where I'm probably an a-hole. I just don't think it's worth it for me to pay that. Hearing out loud, it does sound cruel, but also not untrue. So am I the a-hole if I say something like she can send him wherever she wants, but I will not be contributing? I'll try to come up with a way to word it nicer. No a-holes here, OP. Your stepsister cares about your dad because he was probably more of a father to her than he was to you, and that's okay. You don't have a relationship with him, so it's only normal that you don't care for him as much. Sending her a polite text about how you won't be contributing to finding him a home would be good. She should totally understand after you tell her your reasons and leave you out of the preparation without any issues. Now for some comments. No a-holes here. Your half-sister wants him in a nice place, and that's reasonable. You don't want to spend an untold amount of money on that nice place, and that's also reasonable. I think a big issue here is that you do not know how long you would be splitting the cost. If your dad has a terminal diagnosis, I think you're being more unreasonable. But otherwise, you could be looking at a decade or more of housing costs, and that is not necessarily feasible. No a-hole here for not contributing. It doesn't sound like you can actually afford it. Elder care is super expensive. I don't think she's an a-hole for asking, but I think you just need to be upfront. This isn't something you can afford without substantial changes to your life. To be honest, I do think you are verging into a-hole territory for not at least checking in on him. I understand you weren't as close as your stepsister was to him, but based on your post, it doesn't sound like he did anything bad to you either. I don't think it's entirely cool to put the burden of keeping up with him entirely on your stepsister. Not the a-hole. My father has always been stingy with money even though he has had plenty, always spoiling my mother and himself while barely getting the basics for us. And in his old age, my mother cheated on him, and they both lost all savings over poor spending in the last couple years. He expects my brothers and I to care for him in his old age. We won't be able to afford to care for him because we have ourselves and children to worry about. And he should have worried about his old age when he had the chance. He and most of our relatives all think we're the a-holes, but we all came to the same conclusion alone, so we don't think so. He did the bare minimum when we were children and only very recently made a change in his attitude, but we're all convinced it's because of losing his wife and not wanting to die alone. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for calling my sister fat after she ripped my shirt? This happened a few years ago, but I just want to see the verdict. When my sister and I were teenagers, she was extremely overweight. At that time, I felt as though she often felt victimized because of her weight. I don't think she was ever outright bullied for it, and I feel she had a good friend group in school, but there was a good chance she had a few snarky remarks here and there. She didn't like talking about her weight to anyone, other than close family, and we would get extremely uncomfortable if anyone brought up weight issue topics up. When I was around 16 female, sister was 14. I got this really cute shirt that was imported from India. It was made to be my exact size, meaning that if you were one size above me, it will not fit you. I loved it. I wore it a few times when I would go out, but it usually stayed safe in my closet. One day I decided to put that shirt on again when I noticed rips in it. They were huge and I instantly knew who did it. I walked into my sister's room and asked if she did it. She admitted that yes, she did, because she really wanted to see if she could wear it. At that time, she was starting a weight loss journey and she was hoping that she would start to fit in my clothes. When she realized the shirt was too tight, she tried to remove it, but had to resort to cutting it with scissors in order to fully remove it. It was clear that she felt guilty, but I just felt so mad. I started to yell at her and call her names: pig, whale. Though I don't remember the exact phrase that I said, I know that I was intentionally trying to make her feel horrible. She started to cry and ran to our parents, saying how I said all these horrible things to her. Again, I don't remember, but it was pretty horrible. My mother saw the state of my shirt and remembered how expensive, I want to say about $80 it was, and got mad at my sister too. My dad just walked out of the room shaking his head. Even back then, he was so done with us. I admit I'm still a little upset about it. I can't fully forgive my sister. I'm petty because it was a really special shirt for me. I had it for a few months and I had to hand wash it. It was too fragile to go into the washing machine, and for it to just get ruined with scissors, it was a sad time. On one hand, I get that she was trying to see how far she has progressed and she wanted to try on my shirt. She couldn't get it because it wasn't in her size to see. On the other hand, why didn't you call anyone? It was my shirt. I would have helped you. So am I the a-hole for calling my sister fat for ripping my shirt? Edit. So I wanted to give an aftermath for this fiasco. I didn't see in the beginning because I thought it didn't matter. I wanted to see people's reaction first before I told the ending. Aftermath. After we calmed down, my dad made us sit down and talk about our feelings. If you didn't know already, he's the peacemaker. I explained that I didn't like the way she thought she could just ruin my shirt instead of letting me help her get out of it. She in turn told me that she didn't like how I called her names. We both apologized and left it at that. I didn't truly forgive her until she approached me a few days later to give me my stitched-up shirt. It wasn't the best work. She was 14. But I appreciated the sentiment and cried. She's the best sister ever and I adore her. Currently, she's at a healthy weight and she's happy. I'm really proud of her. I was expecting to be called an a-hole. I mean, who does that to a 14-year-old? I'm kind of disappointed to see so many people defending 16-year-old me's actions. Even if you're angry and emotional, fat shaming should never be tolerated. Right after I made this post, I immediately called her and told her that I was calling me out on Reddit. She laughed and we talked about the stuff we did to each other when we were younger. She started reading the replies and told me that I was getting ripped to shreds. Like you did to my shirt, I replied jokingly. After a while of reading them, she kind of got serious. Do they even know that you were the one that kept pushing me to be a better version of myself? You were the one that joined my diets and exercises. I wouldn't have gotten that far if you weren't there for me, Akka. Needless to say, I cried. She doesn't even know how much she's done for me. My sister is honestly so strong and brave, and she's such an inspiration for me. I would be nowhere without her. I love you, Vinci, my little whale. Akka is just how someone refers to their older sister in my language. I would have changed it to sister, but I really wanted to keep her quote intact, just for memories. Now for some comments. I mean, technically everyone sucks here, but you are like 90% the a-hole in this scenario. Yeah, it was wrong of her to steal the shirt and ruin it, but your reaction was over the top. And you can't even use the "we were teenagers" excuse because you still are upset. And can't forgive her. She made an unintentional mistake. You wanted to hurt her. You have to see how these are different. You're the a-hole. Whatever a-hole credit she might have received is absolutely minuscule compared to the massive gaping a-holishness of your reaction. It's an effing shirt. You can get another shirt. And the fact that you're still holding a grudge over this years later is astonishing. You're really telling us you look back on this event and feel angry about the shirt to this day? I wouldn't be able to think of it at all without drowning in shame. Everyone sucks here. Your sister should have asked you if she could try it on, and it was rude of her not to. And it was also wrong of her to cut it rather than get help. You, on the other hand, shouldn't have intentionally tried to make her feel bad about herself, especially since you know how she is about her weight. What you did was worse though. I checked the update and this honestly ended up being so wholesome.